What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another MLB Live Before Lock. We are sponsored by Better today, and not Better today. Very confusing. I know it was Better being the sponsor. I was making fun of Mike before. We're sponsored by Better, and whatever. It's like who's on first sort of situation. But we are sponsored by Better. We also have it at MLB DFS slate to talk about today. We could have the last NBA slate for a little while as well. So later on today, we're going to be doing NBA Live Before Lock. It'll be Eric and Josh, and I'll be joining Josh over on Playback. But yeah, if that game ends up being a Dallas Mavericks win, they sweep the series, and there won't be another NBA game until, June 6th, June 7th, like a very considerable amount of time. So we'll see what ends up happening there, but all the more reason for you guys to check out our NBA content for later, because it could be going away for a little bit. Before we get there, time to talk about baseball, top stacks, top pitchers, talk about who are playing in single entry. We'll answer all the questions you guys have. You are a Stochastic sub in our Discord channel. Me over the course of the show so I could answer any questions that you have. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Matt, what is happening today?
Nothing, man. Happy to be back on here with you after the long weekend. Do anything fun this weekend?
Shows for the most part. Work. I did stuff on Monday. I was doing the baseball show on Monday, and then there was also basketball to do. So just the status quo. But yeah, it does look like we're going to have a little bit of a down period coming up, because at some point we're going to be reaching the end of the NBA season, regardless of what ends up happening here. So yeah, definitely going to be a little bit of a lighter workload, because I've been pretty busy over the last few months.
Yeah, well, that's good and bad, but at least we get to talk some MLB for the next few months, if nothing else.
Yeah, and we do have see people in the chat bringing up Nathan Eovaldi. He is going to be back today. We'll talk about the implications of him returning. But before we get there, let's talk about the most expensive pitchers on the slate. Now, we've got 3 pay-up options to go to, all of them fairly comparably owned. We've got Zach Wheeler against the Giants. He's $11K on DK, projected for 18% ownership. We've got Freddie Peralta, 10,500, pitching at home against the Cubs. He's 17% owned. And then finally, we've got our guy Cole Ragans pitching against the Minnesota Twins, 10,200. He is 12% owned. So not much separating the ownership of these top pitchers, Matt. Do you think that's correct? Or do you think there is one of these pitchers that does stand out more than the other two?
I think it's pretty correct, to be quite honest. Like, all these guys are good. I think if anything stands out, it's Cole Ragans' ownership. Not going to be surprised if that comes up a little while a couple other guys come down. I would say that's really the only surprising thing to me, is how much less ownership he's projected to get than the other guys. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, so for myself, none of these guys are really priorities. If I look at my exposures, none of these pitchers are my most rostered. I am a little bit overweight to Zach Wheeler. By a little bit, I have 20% of him. So like very, very minor amount. If I have the ability to spend up for one pitcher on the slate, my preference is to go towards Zach Wheeler. But like I said, none of these pitchers are real priorities for me. There's other spots that I prefer to be getting to. And then also, it's a slate where I don't think it's the worst situation in the world to be a little bit spread out with your pitcher exposure, because there are a handful of good pitchers to be getting to. So if you told me you're playing Ragans, you're playing Peralta, you're playing Wheeler, I don't have issue with any of them. The way that I have them ranked is actually in order of what their price tags are. That's the amount of exposure that I have to them in order. I do have Wheeler 1, Peralta 2, Ragans 3, but no real big stands. I have right around 10% of Ragans when he's projected for 12% ownership. I have 16% of Freddie Peralta when he's projected for 17% ownership. And then I right now have Zach Wheeler in 20% of lineups when he's projected for 18% ownership. So overall, I think the ownership is looking pretty efficient from my point of view. For yourself, are you looking to roster these pitchers today in some of your single entry stuff, Matt? Or are there other pitchers that you're prioritizing for the day?
Man, honestly, I'd love to be able to get to 2 of these guys, but the problem is there are expensive bats, I like a lot. So, man, it's just not a slate where I see that many viable cheap stacks is the problem. And there are definitely some viable cheap pitchers to make the expensive stacks work. So, yeah, I think those 3 guys are all really good plays in their own right. But because of the context on the slate, I don't think any of them are must plays, and I don't think you have to play any one of them.
Yeah, and by the way, if you guys are playing, this is not going to impact the main slate, but if you guys are playing any of those earlier slates, the Tigers-Pirates game has been postponed. So doesn't impact our discussion here, but just want to let you guys know that if you are playing any of those early slates, take that game out of any of the lineups that you have there. So let's talk about some of the slightly cheaper pitchers to be getting to, not the cheapest of cheap pitchers, which I think is going to warrant a bigger talking point for us, Matt. But the pitchers, let's talk about the 8K range through the 9K range. There are a handful of popular pitchers in this price range. The most popular, which is Kevin Gausman at $8,500 against the Chicago White Sox. He's projected for 26% ownership, but still a handful of other pitchers that are picking up some ownership as well. Luzardo, even in a tough matchup against the Padres, he's 10% owned at 8K. Nathan Eovaldi, nobody's really rostering him coming back from the injured list. People brought him back. People brought him up in chat. I think somebody had mentioned wanting to play him. I would not want to be getting to Nathan Eovaldi. I think he's going to be fairly restricted as far as his pitch count is concerned today at $8,600 coming off the injured list. Max Fried is 18% owned. Luis Castillo, 16% owned. Nestor Cortez is 7% owned. What are you doing with this price range, Matt? Because once again, no crazy chalk. Some popularity going to Kevin Gausman, but it's nothing overbearing. What do you like the most of the pitchers who are in the 8 and 9K range?
Another really good range. I mean, some aces in this list. And on a lot of slates, these guys would be like must-have options. They're not today, but I think Fried in particular looks really, really good at 8,800. Too cheap. Maybe doesn't have the upside or strikeout upside of some of these other guys, but his ability to go so deep into games makes him a very strong play at 8,800. I expect him to just carve here. I like Castillo always. I'm a huge Castillo guy. I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Struggle to get to him tonight, though, just because there's so many good options, and it's just such a tough matchup against Houston. Now, I was saying this earlier. You can make the case that this Houston lineup isn't as elite right now, certainly not the back half, but he's not cheap enough where I need to go there tonight on this slate. Luzardo, I just, as bad as San Diego's been against lefties this year, they don't strike out a lot, and they have lefty mashers up and down their lineup. So Donovan Solano, a guy, it's not like I'm really trying to play in DFS. He hasn't been with this team all year. He's obviously much better against left-handed pitching. They've gotten some band-aids to fix some of their holes. Don't expect it to work long-term, but just a really tough matchup for Luzardo. And Cortez, I can't do it at 9,500 on the road here. He's been awful on the road. And again, I'm not using him because of this, but on a slate with this many options, I think you can nitpick a little bit. He's averaging over like 25 fantasy points at home, under 8 at home on the road. And that's worrisome. He's always been much better at home. Again, I'm not taking too much into that, but on a slate with so many good options, I don't feel the need to go to 9,500 Cortez. How do you see this?
Yeah, so, I mean, you didn't talk about to me, the most important guy in this pricing range, Kevin Gausman, which we'll talk a little bit more about him here. He's my favorite guy to get to in this range. He's got the matchup against the Chicago White Sox, and yeah, the ERA is a little bit inflated this year at 4.47, but he still is sporting a 25.1% strikeout rate, which is solid, and it's all his numbers are going to improve going forward. Also, Gausman has pitched well overall for the year. A couple things have done him in. First off, bad luck. He's a 3.1 FIP compared to his 4.47 ERA. This is because he has a 65.1% strand rate. It's 74.4% for his career. It's going to bounce back. It's going to be fine going forward. The other thing, too, about the ERA for Gausman, it's really because of 3 bad starts, actually. Other than that, he's been really good. He had this one start against Minnesota, which was, 3 weeks ago? We saw Gausman go out 3 innings, 7 runs against Minnesota. Other than that, though, he'd been on a run where he'd given up 3 or less earned runs in like every single start since April 12th. So we had this one outlier start that does kind of drag his ERA up. And, you have a couple of these bad starts when you're 10, 11 starts in the year, it's going to inflate your ERA. But the underlying numbers are all good. The strikeout rate is good. And then he also has such a good matchup against the Chicago White Sox. I guess the only thing you could really say about Kevin Gausman here is just that, he did start the year a little bit slow, didn't really get himself a spring training, was dealing with an offseason elbow injury. His velocity down slightly, although that's also improved over the last couple of starts. So I do think there's maybe a case to be made that Kevin Gausman is not quite the same pitcher now that he was a year or 2 years ago. But in this matchup where he's also priced down a good amount, doesn't really matter to me all that much. He's popular, but it's not like he's 40% owned or anything, which is what we have seen from a lot of pitchers against Chicago White Sox. So a core play for me is Kevin Gausman, and we'll talk about some of the other I'll talk about some of the other pitching options in this range as well. But my priority is Kevin Gausman here, Matt.
I get that. I have no arguments with that. Normally, I would definitely agree with you, and I have no arguments against it, to be quite honest. As far as his early season goes, he even said that he kind of wish he had went to the IL to start the season. So writing that off a little bit, and I'm with you. Like, he's been good besides those two, off starts. His underlyings aren't great though, so I'm just not exactly sure what to make of him right now. He's definitely too cheap, and he's in a great spot. I think his ownership is going to really rise. I expect him and Waldron to be the two highest owned pitchers on the slate, especially if weather clears. And I just like so many other guys that I don't want to go to Gausman here, recognizing that the spot is great and the price tag is too cheap.
Yeah, so Gausman for me, especially if you're playing cash games, go ahead and play him. There is some chance of weather in the Toronto-Chicago game. As of right now, though, not really all that concerning to me. And then maybe it does lead to a little bit of an ownership discount. I don't know if you played the slate yesterday, Matt, but there was a crazy ownership discount on Joe Ryan, where Joe Ryan, I was messaging Josh about it, where I didn't think the weather looked all that bad in that game. And I was loading up on Joe Ryan, and I saw people bring up weather concerns. I looked at the radar. I was looking at some of the forecasts. I was like, I don't really see it that way. And then single entry, Joe Ryan was sub 10% owned in large field tournaments. He was projected for 40% ownership. He came in sub 20. I don't think that's going to be the case with Gausman, but we got a crazy weather ownership discount on Joe Ryan yesterday. So I wouldn't mind getting something similar on Kevin Gausman, but if you're rostering one pitcher in this 8 to 9K range, who'd be the one guy you'd gravitate towards?
Breed for me, but I could see Gausman for sure. And I played Ryan yesterday. I played one lineup because of that. And I don't think it's anywhere close to that today. I just don't think the risk is there. It's lightened up as the day has gone on. I expect Gausman's ownership to rise. I mean, we saw Chris Bassett yesterday. I know that was in part because of Joe Ryan, but he was like 50% owned in some of the single entry stuff. So people will continue to pick on this White Sox team. I expect Gausman to be that highest owned pitcher on the slate. Doesn't mean he's a bad play. That's just what I expect.
Yeah, I still think we'll talk about him in a little bit. I do think by the time that, and it is projected to be the case now, but I think Matt Waldron's going to be crazy popular against the Marlins, considering there's a Coors Field game and what his price point is. But yeah, as far as pay up options go, like I think Gausman is going to be the most popular pay up option, the second most popular pitcher overall on the slate behind Matt Waldron, who's crazy popular today against the Miami Marlins. But as far as Max Fried goes, if I'm looking at the lower owned pitchers in this price range, I do get to Fried the second most, Castillo the third most, but still Gausman, my number one guy in this pricing range. And then also I agree with you on Nestor Cortez. It is really hard for me to get to Cortez considering what his price point is. He is in 2 of my top 150 lineups, so hardly getting to him. And then I also have a bet on him, which let me pull this up. It was one of the top bets on OddsShopper earlier in the day, which if you guys want to sign up for OddsShopper, links below in the description box. But let me see what the line was so I could tell you guys. It was Cortez. All right, my phone is slow to load right now. But off the top of my head, it was like Cortez +5. It was Cortez under 5.5 strikeouts, but it was like +125 odds. So that was one of the top bets of the day earlier in the day on OddsShopper. So just throwing that out for additional reference. Anything else you want to talk about as far as these pitchers go in this pricing range?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. So let's talk about, let's see, which range do we want to go to now? And then we'll talk about the FanDuel. I saw some people talking about FanDuel in the chat and asking us about FanDuel. We'll look at the FanDuel pitchers after we wrap up talking about the DK pitchers. But let's go to all of the 7K pitchers. We'll group all these guys together. The reason I want to put all of them together, Matt, is because none of them have ownership at all. So just see if there's any contrarian options we like in the 7K range. If not, we'll go talk about some of the chalky punt options for the day. But Jake Woodford, Brandon Pfaadt, Jake Irvin, Ben Brown, Tristan McKenzie, these are the pitchers that are making up your pricing range in the 7K here. And we don't have a single one of these pitchers projected for any meaningful amount of ownership. The most popular, Brandon Pfaadt, is 6.8% owned. Do you like any of these guys, Matt?
No, Pfaadt would be the only guy I'd play. I'm a Pfaadt fan. He's been very good over the past 2 starts. against Cincinnati and the Dodgers. Cincy at home, the Dodgers on the road. Impressive. And his underlines are actually better than his actual numbers. So I think Fott's a good pitcher. Texas is better against right-handed pitching, though. And I just think he's basically the same as the two guys cheaper than him in Hunter Brown and Waldron. I'd rather spend down even more. So it would be Fott. No one else I'm even thinking about, but I doubt I get to him. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not getting to anything in this pricing range like at all right now. The only pitcher I have at all is also Brandon Fott, and he's in one of my top 150 lineups. So for sure, if I'm playing 1, 2, 3, even if I'm playing 20 lineups, Fott is not a consideration for me against the Rangers today. So I'll be looking elsewhere. Kind of interesting. We did get a question in Discord. This is from Hatchet31. He wanted to know who we think is going to win the National League Cy Young. He's looking to bet on Imanaga. And here's the way I look at it. If the season ended today, I think Imanaga would win Cy Young. Would you agree with that, Matt? Or do you think somebody else would win if the season ended today, for starters?
Is he the odds-on favorite right now?
Zach Wheeler is, except that's also because it's projecting out, the rest of the season.
Sure.
Imanaga is a sub-1 ERA. It's just hard for me to believe that the season ended today. You're not going to win Cy Young with a 0.8 ERA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to rise, but yeah, if the Cy Young if there was a first 50 game Cy Young, it would go to Imanaga. I'm with you.
Free Scotty in the chat says Ranger Suarez. I mean, by the way, people who are fans of the Phillies got very upset at me for saying that I think Imanaga would win Cy Young if the season ended today. For reference, Ranger Suarez gave up 5 runs in his last start. That is as many runs as Imanaga has allowed the entire season. So it's not to say Ranger Suarez hasn't been great. He has been, but Imanaga has just been better to this point. In my opinion, anyway. In my opinion,
Yeah.
To this point in the season, Imanaga has been a little bit better. But if we're looking at the rest of the season, which obviously also includes what's happened to this point this year, who would you pick? Who would you pick as the most likely to win Cy Young in the National League?
Wheeler, for sure. I mean, he's the favorite right now. I think you can make the case for him right now. And I definitely expect Imanaga's like the other shoe to drop there. And Wheeler is about as consistent as they come. So pretty clearly for me, Wheeler. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to say Wheeler as well. And it's mostly due to reliability. So here are the other pitchers that I'd consider being in the mix right now.
Glass
right?
now.
So Imanaga, Ranger Suarez, I'm going to put them in a bucket together in terms of kind of unproven to me. Like we've seen Imanaga pitch really well overseas. We've seen Ranger Suarez pitch well, not nearly this well at the MLB level, though. So that's where, to me, it's like, is Ranger Suarez actually this elite of a starting pitcher? Or is it just, hey, he's made 11 starts. It's a small sample size and he's going to regress a little bit. I tend to think that's the case. And probably the same case with Imanaga as well. The other pitcher who I think is, well, 2 pitchers actually that I want to group together as well. I didn't mention Chris Sale before. Sale has been ridiculously good so far this year. So is Tyler Glasnow. I don't trust either of them to stay healthy, though. If you told me that Chris Sale is going to stay healthy the rest of the year, he's lied. Same with Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow has never pitched more than 120 innings in his career, and Chris Sale has been hurt for the majority of the last 7 seasons now. So it's hard for me to think either of them stay healthy.
I agree, but I kind of Sale slipped my mind. He might be my choice, and you could throw him in right now as like the first 50 games Cy Young. I still think it's probably Imanaga, but Sale is right there, and I think he's definitely live for the rest of the season. Good call.
And then that's where I just kind of land on Zach Wheeler, who Zach Wheeler's also been up there. 2.53 ERA, 2.76 expected ERA. Not only has he been an elite starting pitcher for a bunch of years now, but Wheeler's also been incredibly durable and a guy who's just been a workhorse that throws a ton of innings. So you look at the last few seasons for Zach Wheeler, 32 starts, 26, 32. Only had 11 starts. That was in the shortened season, though. Before that, then you go back to his time with the Mets, 31 starts, 29 starts. So the last time that he actually missed time, he did have the Tommy John surgery early in his career, but you have to go back to 2015 for that. He has been incredibly durable since coming back from that injury in 2017. And you just can't say the same about pitchers like Tyler Glasnow and Chris Sale. So by process of elimination, I think Zach Wheeler is the most likely to win. But yeah, it's been a pretty loaded field as far as performances to start the season. it's funny because if you remember back to some of the early season DFS slates, we talked about some of the inconsistencies with the ace type starting pitching, Matt. I think it was really more so because we didn't identify who the aces were going to be this year. Because who would have thought that we'd be a third of the way through the season and Imanaga would have a sub-1 ERA, or that Ranger Suarez would be in the Cy Young mix, or that Chris Sale would be able to stay healthy and have as good of a bounce back season as he's had. Here's the award that I could say with a pretty high degree of certainty Chris Sale wins if he stays healthy. That comeback player of the year award in the National League. Like that, this is like just a shoo-in candidate, Chris Sale, because he has pitched, hardly at all the last few seasons. So that's, if I'm telling you who I think is most likely to win, I'm going to go with Zach Wheeler. But from talking about the best pitchers in baseball to the chalk pitchers that we have for very cheap today, Matt, which include the likes of Matt Waldron and Hunter Brown. Here's what we have sub 7K today. Simeon Woods, Richardson, Hunter Brown, Matt Waldron, Ryan Feltner pitching at Coors Field, Eric Manning, and then Eric Miller. Two of these pitchers, very popular today. Hunter Brown is 25% owned against the Seattle Mariners, and Matt Waldron is 34% owned against the Miami Marlins. As of right now, in our data, Waldron is projected to be the most popular pitcher on DraftKings. What do you make of that?
I mean, it makes sense, man, because we've got expensive offenses to look at. It's kind of what I said at the beginning, and he's just too cheap. I don't think he's particularly good in real life, but he's got good strikeout numbers. He's in a great ballpark for pitching. He's facing one of the worst offenses on the slate. So he's just too cheap here. I mean, 6,200 is just a misprice. And again, I don't think he's particularly good, but he should be $1,000 at least more, at least. He's just a good play based on price per dollar stuff. And the fact that on slates like this, bats are usually what takes the cake. And like, you need your bats to go off to win tournaments. Now, the problem with these cheap guys is that Wheeler, Peralta, Gausman, Reagans, those guys are all live to put up 30 plus because they're really good pitchers. But Brown and Waldron are both definitely live to put up 20 because of the spots they're in. Like, even if they get hit a little bit, both Seattle and Miami strike out a lot. Great ballparks for pitching. Like, I understand the ownership on both these guys, and I hate it that it's coming on a slate with such good pitching options, but we finally got a lot of good bats in play. So I completely understand it. How about you?
Yeah, I am right. Let's see. Let me sort. What did I have here for my exposures? Yeah, I'm right around in line with the field on Matt Waldron. I do prefer Hunter Brown for the ownership discount, though, because I do view them as being pretty comparable pitchers today. The difference, though, is that Hunter Brown you are getting for, let's see, we just had an ownership update, by the way, if you didn't see that. But Hunter Brown we're now getting for 25% ownership compared to 35% on Matt Waldron. To me, pretty reasonable to just be like, hey, I could get like somewhere around the field on Matt Waldron, but I'll play a little bit more of Hunter Brown for the ownership discount, who I do think is the better pitcher. Going forward, I think Hunter Brown is going to be better than Matt Waldron. Waldron, 27-year-old knuckleballer who has basically been dog shit until this year. The strikeouts have come out of nowhere for him. Matt Waldron, 23.5% K rate. I'm very skeptical of his numbers because that 23.5% K rate he has this year, he didn't even touch that in the minor leagues. This is the guy who had strikeout rates in the teens when he pitched in the minors. So for reference, in 2022 in AAA, he had a 17.3% strikeout rate, and he also got hit pretty hard in the minor leagues. And his major league numbers are okay, not great, not terrible. 4.86 ERA, 3.83 expected ERA this year. So I think he's going to regress going forward. I just don't know that the Miami Marlins is the matchup he regresses in. So he's somebody to be getting to. Play him in cash games and tournaments, though. The ownership is pretty high. I'm going to be somewhere about at the field, maybe a little bit underweight.
That's fair. Like, you definitely don't have to play Waldron or Brown for that matter because there's so many good pitching options. The problem is, like, I view this slate as kind of top heavy and bottom heavy, if that makes sense, where like I either really like the expensive pitchers or the cheap pitchers. There's not much in between I like. Gausman and Fried are the two exceptions, but those guys are like 8K range. They're not cheap. And all the good stacks are expensive. Bats are priced up here. So unless you want to stack a team like, I mean, they're like the Marlins or the White Sox, you're going to have to concede somewhere. And I think both Brown and Waldron are underpriced and mispriced.
Do you have a preference between Brown and Waldron? You might have said it and I missed it.
Nah, it's Brown because of everything you said. Like ownership, I think he's better than Waldron. I will say, like, I view them as the same but different in this spot. Like median projection wise, probably very similar. But I think Brown has much higher upside and a much lower floor. Where Waldron, I expect 15 fantasy points somewhere around there. Brown could give you 25. He could give you 0.
Yeah, he could also give you negative. I've played some of those slates this year as well. The start.
Me too.
How many fantasy points did he score? I mean, I don't know if you say score. How many fantasy points did he lose in that matchup against the Royals? I'm sure you remember the one I'm talking about.
I think negative 26. And last I checked, the Royals just got another hit off him.
Yeah, still another infield single. Let's see. What was it? He finished with, negative 23.7 in that.
That's insane.
Start. How many? All right, of his runs he's allowed this year, how many of them came from that start?
Well, he hasn't been great other than that is the thing. So like, yeah, I mean, that probably is a good chunk of it, but it's not like he's been lights out other than that. Like he's had walk problems is his big issue.
Yeah. What are his numbers in May? Let's see. He does have a sub 4 ERA in May, so that's a hell of a lot better than it was in April. But you know, how good could your season be when you have a start where you go less than an inning and you give up? Yeah, got two. He got 2 outs and give up 9 earned runs in that start. So yeah, I mean, you're looking at 30% of the runs he allowed the entire year came in less than an inning against the Royals. So it does inflate those numbers a little bit. He's pitched better as of late. The one caveat being that he has also seen a little bit of a dip in strikeout rate in his last few starts, which a little bit of a concern. But overall, yeah, going forward, I think Hunter Brown is going to be better than Waldron. You're getting a pretty big ownership discount relative to the two. So both good salary saving options. I'm going to take Hunter Brown for the lower ownership. Do you like anybody else in this pricing range? Is there anybody you like to pivot off of to maybe be contrarian and punt with?
No. The only guy, and I mentioned him on the earlier show, Ryan Feltner is not bad. I've talked about him a bunch, and his underlying numbers are, again, not bad, and Cleveland's going to be chalky. I can't do it on this slate, but just throwing it out there. I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland's not amazing tonight.
Yeah, I have no lineups with Ryan Feltner. He's in none of my top 150 lineups, so not somebody I'm going to be getting to. But yeah, I do agree with you. I know you've been bringing him up since the start of the year as well. He hasn't pitched all that bad. He's been pretty decent, so not enough for me to want to actually roster him at Coors Field here, but yeah, he's been all right. And also, once again, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll go look at the pitchers over on FanDuel. A lot of the analysis, it's generally going to be relatively similar to what we talked about on DraftKings. The pitchers are kind of similar. One big difference: Kevin Gausman is the third most expensive pitcher. I mean to say, over on FanDuel at 10,200. So you're not getting any kind of real pricing discount on Kevin Gausman. But what you are getting on Kevin Gausman is a big ownership discount, because at 10,200 on FanDuel, Matt, he's only projected for 4% ownership. A contrarian Kevin Gausman against the White Sox, I like him the most in tournaments as a pay-up option. If I'm looking to be safe, yeah, go ahead and play Zach Wheeler in cash games against the Giants. He's projected to be the chalk on FanDuel. But I don't think that Kevin Gausman should have a fifth of the ownership of Zach Wheeler. So if I want to be contrarian on FanDuel and play a tournament, I like Gausman a good amount against the White Sox. I'm really surprised he's 3.9% owned.
I have no argument to that. I will say, though, for me, Waldron is out of play. I'm surprised he's getting so much ownership. Like, he's not even cheap. Castillo looks like the slam dunk for me on FanDuel. And I hate the matchup still, but a couple things. One, he's cheap for FanDuel pricing considerations. Like, he's closer to Waldron than he is Raggins or Wheeler or Gausman. Like, that's crazy. He's in that group of pitchers, no doubt. Strikeouts don't matter quite as much on FanDuel, whereas the quality start and win matter more. So I don't know. I think Castillo looks really, really good on FanDuel compared to DraftKings, that is.
Yeah, he's been solid so far as well. The field is getting there, but not at a crazy rate. I mean, he is, 16% owned over on FanDuel. So a little bit less popular than Zach Wheeler, a little bit more popular than Freddie Peralta. Those are your second and third most rostered pitchers. I also like, if I'm going to be going cheap, once again, Hunter Brown over on FanDuel. He's only $7,400. And considering that we do have Luis Castillo as the second most popular pitcher on FanDuel, if the Astros do end up winning the game, you are getting some leverage if Hunter Brown gets that win bonus instead of a Luis Castillo. But there's also not that many cheap pitchers to be getting to on FanDuel. So when you're getting a 7% on Hunter Brown, it's $7,400, who's like the fifth cheapest pitcher over on FanDuel. I like the salary savings you're getting from Hunter Brown, especially if you want to play the Coors Field game and pay up for that. Hunter Brown kind of gives you unlimited savings for offense over on FanDuel.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anything else that stands out to you about FanDuel? For, like I said, for the most part, the pitchers are kind of similar, DK, relative to FanDuel.
Yeah, nah, I think we see it basically eye to eye.
Okay, so let's go ahead and build some lineups in the lineup generator. Mike, if you wouldn't mind throwing that up on screen, we'll build some lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll see what the lineup generator gives us. If you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, link below in the description box, less than $15. It's going to build lineups for you, but also if you want to, you could customize these lineups. If you want to do stuff like lock in a player or specified to build a contrarian lineup for you, or if you want to customize some of those lineups by switching out an individual player you don't like, you could do that with our ownership projections and our player projections, which are included in the lineup generator. But once again, if you want to sign up less than $15, just use that link that we have below in the description box over on YouTube. Let's go ahead and look at DraftKings to start here, Mike. So click DraftKings. All stack types. And let's build balance lineups. We'll do balance for FanDuel and DK. Don't lock anybody in. And now save. Oh, you might have to clear your lineups for earlier. Yeah, and just go back into it. Just from the start. Yeah. Go back to DraftKings. I'll give you a buffer to clear out your FanDuel lineups. Yeah, so just save a bunch of them, and then we'll look at the ownerships that we're getting to here. In the interim, I'll check to see if we have any questions in Discord that have come in for us, which we do not. But if you guys do have questions for me, hit me up. And we got that one before from Hatchet31 who asked about the Cy Young Award. But pitchers here, we're getting to a shit ton of Matt Waldron, getting to a bunch of Kevin Gausman. I see Hunter Brown down there. Nothing really all that surprising. And then a ton of your Cleveland Guardians here, Matt. So Cleveland Guardians, yeah, they are in like 3/4 of our lineups. You'd mentioned that, and not the first time. You've been saying this since the start of the year. You've been kind of bullish on Ryan Felton. Not that you're calling him like a Cy Young or anything like that. We were doing Cy Young predictions before. None of us talking about Ryan Felton or that kind of conversation, but he's a guy who, relative to the public, you've been bullish on so far this year. We've got the Guardians as the most popular team on the slate. They also have the highest top stack odds. How are you going to be approaching Cleveland when you have been a little bit higher on Feltner than most other people, and correctly so to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's been amazing, but as you said, you kind of said it beautifully. Given the ownership, like this is a classic. We project them to come in under-owned as far as their top stack percentage, but in single entry stuff, like all their best hitters are going to be owned. We saw it yesterday. Toronto is actually higher stacked than Cleveland, but like Jose Ramirez is 40% owned. I see a similar story tonight. Maybe the full stack isn't quite as high owned, but like Tyler Freeman will be, Jimenez will be, Ramirez surely will be. The combination of Naylor and Manzardo will be. So I think you can get different with the back half. Probably not where I'm going to go because there's other stacks I like more, but I wouldn't fault anyone for just playing a ton of Cleveland, and in large field, they look like the best team to get to.
Our 7 most rostered hitters in the lineup generator were all from the Cleveland Guardians right there. So lineup generator just giving us a metric shit ton of these hitters. But for single entry, and yeah, large field tournaments, I like Cleveland. They're going to be one of my most rostered stacks. Ownership could be, like a little bit problematic. So it's not like I'm going to be getting to like 40% of them or anything like that. I will be having a handful of teams I have double-digit exposure to, it looks like, from looking at my lineups here. But the slate was locking right now, Matt. Who would you be playing in single entry for this slate?
It's a good question. Still between a couple of teams.
Okay.
I want to say Philly. Like, Philly's a team I've liked all day, but they're so expensive, and I still don't even know about the San Francisco pitcher coming in. If it's Spencer Howard, I might do whatever I can to get Philly, but even if you use like Waldron and Brown, stacking the first five of Philly leaves you with like no salary. So they're a very tough stack. Kind of makes me like them more, but again, they might just be too hard to get to. So after them, it's between Colorado and Kansas City. I like both a lot. How about yourself?
So I like Colorado. The Colorado Rockies going up against Tristan McKenzie. And McKenzie's just not been generating strikeouts this year. We've talked about his inconsistencies, the fact that he's pitching with a partially torn UCL, which is typically what leads to a Tommy John surgery, which is impacting his velocity, his overall effectiveness. So I am overweight to the field on the Rockies. I don't think I'm going to be getting to them in single entry. I do have let's see. I have 7% of the Rockies. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 teams I've double-digit exposure to, Matt. Do you want to guess which 5 stacks it is? So, I'm fairly spread out with my stacks today. So 5 double-digit owned teams, and then I've got a bunch of teams that are, like the Rockies at 7%, some other teams like 4 or 5%, but 5 teams I have most predominant.
I will guess, but before I guess, tell me where you stand on the Royals.
Let's see. I am not really getting to very much of the Royals.
Okay. So my guess is on the teams you have over 10% of: Cleveland, obviously.
Yep.
The Yankees.
Yep.
The Braves.
Yep.
The Blue Jays.
4 for 4.
And
I don't know you're going to be able to get this one. If you do, I'd be pretty impressed.
Because you said it wasn't the Rockies. So I'm going to go with Seattle.
Not Seattle. I'll give you a hint that'll let you get it right away. It's similar thought process. You're close.
Oh, Miami. So
yeah, it's Miami. I
should have known that because you were lower on Waldron. I'm gonna kick myself for that.
It's not like I love the Marlins or anything like that, but I ran everything through the Sims tool and I ended up coming away with I have 12% Marlin stacks for today. They're super cheap. It's going to put you on a way different build than the rest of the field for multiple reasons. What the field is generally doing today is going cheap at pitching and spending up at offense. And one of the main reasons one of the main ways they're able to do this is because the field is jamming Waldron today and then paying up for Coors Field. So if you're stacking against Waldron, you're getting leverage off the field. You're also on just a completely different lineup build than everybody else is on. So Marlin stacks. The Marlins do have our top value stack in the top stacks tool. We have them with a 9.8% chance to be the top value stack over on DK4 today. So the Marlins, I'm not considering them in single entry, but it is a team for large field tournaments. I like getting exposure to. And then you could pitch whoever you want with them. If you want to go to Zach Wheeler and Kevin Gausman, not all that difficult to do with Miami. If you want to go to Freddie Peralta and Zach Wheeler, you can do that with Miami as well. You're getting a team that's projected for very low ownership against a super popular pitcher. I don't like it, but these are the spots I end up playing when I'm, a little bit underweight to the field on Waldron. I'll be playing some Marlin stacks. So those are the 5 stacks it is that I'm getting to. Anything that you disagree with or that stands out to you in any way?
No, I guess my only thing about Miami and why I'm not overly enticed by them is you've got the Waldron ownership, but even if he's not good, I just don't see them winning this slate in this ballpark that often. Like, there are certainly many scenarios in where Waldron isn't good, but is the Miami stack really going to win the slate? Maybe. I mean, it's MLB. Crazy stuff happens on a nightly basis, but I think I would like them more as like mini stacks to fit the better, bigger stacks, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And once again, it's not like I'm pounding the drums being like, this is the greatest stack ever. It's like I have a little bit more than 10% of them in large field tournaments. Malukar in the YouTube chat was asking, is LeMahieu in today? Yes, LeMahieu is batting 9th for the Yankees, $3,300. It does suck that he's only first base eligible, though. There was a point in time where you could play DJ LeMahieu at, like second and third base, and he had really good eligibility. The fact that he's hitting 9th and first base only eligible. Let me see if I'm sure I have some lineups with him just because I am making Yankee stacks, but let me check. LeMahieu. He's in 3.3% of my lineup. So what is that? Out of 150, like 6 or something like that, 5 lineups with LeMahieu. So he's in some, but not somebody who I'm really prioritizing for today, Malukar. The biggest issues, batting ninth and also only the first base eligibility. Anything else you want to add about single entry stacks or anything, Matt?
How about Philly? Like, where did
Let's
you stand on
see.
them?
We've
Yeah, sorry.
got the Phillies. Where are they in the top stacks? Oh, here they are. So we've got Eric Miller on the mound. Definitely a massive ballpark downgrade, clearly, for the Philadelphia Phillies going on the road in San Francisco. Phillies, I don't have any 5-man stacks of the Phillies that showed up for me. 0.
Fair enough. One thing I'll just say about Colorado and Kansas City, which I'm going back and forth on. I like Colorado slightly more, and our top stack tool says that. But one thing that is throwing me off a little bit is McKenzie is a lot worse against lefties, and Colorado really only has 2 of them in McMahon and Blackman. Obviously, McMahon's one of the best bats on the slate in my mind, but other than that, like all their quote unquote good hitters are righties. The Royals, most of their good hitters are righties too, but Woods Richardson has massive reverse split so far where he's a lot better against lefties. So I don't know, just something that might push me onto KC.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think what we're going to find is that Simeon Woods Richardson isn't good against lefties or righties when the dust settles.
Fair.
So it's not
Fair.
like I hate the Kansas City Royals. It is a team that I typically do target. And like I said,
I
have
know.
some
That's why I
exposure,
asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
You get to them a lot, which is all I was going to say. So I was wondering if you were getting there tonight. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, all good. Yeah, just other stacks I was prioritizing too. I mean, it's what, 10, 11 game slate, a lot of offenses to choose from. So the 5 that the Sims tool boiled me down to, Kansas City was not one of the priorities. Got some of them just about in line with the field. And then they are also, as far as Kansas City goes, they've got to be a good amount more expensive too. Earlier in the year, they were fairly cheap. Let's see, what are the individual hitter prices for today from KC? Just so I have all of them I can read off accurately here. Yeah. So of the good hitters, like they're super expensive. Michael Garcia is 4,500 now. Bobby Witt is 6,200. Salvador Perez is 5,500. Vinny Pasquantino, who only has first base eligibility, he's $4,800. And then when you go down towards the bottom of the lineup, it's a very top heavy lineup. The bottom of it's like Kyle Isbell, $2,700. Garrett Hampson's $2,400. Hunter Renfroe, who typically only hits well against lefties, he's $3K. Lofton, $3,300. Velasquez does have power. He's $3,300. But I don't really love those bottom of the order guys. And the top of the order is super expensive. That's probably what's prohibiting me from getting there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I guess when all is said and done, like they're very similarly priced to Colorado. Like they've got Witt, who's more expensive, but Colorado is not cheap either, especially up top. Like Elias Diaz, 4,900. Colorado's a little bit cheaper, but not significantly enough where that's like factoring anything in for me personally. I am a little bit worried that Colorado's ownership like gets a little bit higher than we project, but that could be completely for naught. Might just be thinking too much.
Jacques Cacao in the YouTube chat asked, who are the cash bats for today? Yeah, so I think at pitcher, you're going Matt Waldron and Kevin Gausman in cash games, which is going to give you a lot of salary savings to be able to pay up for the Guardians and Yankees bats in cash. I think that's the pretty clear cash game build you should be looking at for today. Let's look at some of those FanDuel lineups now, Mike. We'll see what we're getting to on FanDuel as far as pitchers and stacks are concerned, and then we'll try to figure out who are the individual stacks that stand out the most to us for FanDuel purposes. But Mike, yeah, go FanDuel here. Yeah, same deal, all stack types. And we'll go balanced again. And now save 20 lineups. And we'll go ahead and look at the exposures. As far as FanDuel is concerned, we do have a lot more ownership going to the Atlanta Braves. They are 14% owned over on FanDuel. The Yankees are 12% owned. We are actually getting single-digit ownership on the Cleveland Guardians over on FanDuel. They are very, very expensive, but pricing is rarely all that much of an issue over on FanDuel. So over on DraftKings, we had some concerns like, hey, how popular are the Guardians going to be in single entry? I don't really share those concerns for FanDuel, Matt. I think Cleveland's pretty clearly the top stack to get to on FanDuel.
Yeah, same. even a little slightly higher top stack percentage, lower ownership. Yeah, 100% with you.
Lineup generators giving us a good amount of Guardians. They are in about half of our lineups. Then we do have 3/4 of our lineups with the Atlanta Braves. And yeah, the Braves look really good against Jake Irvin as well. I mentioned before, that's one of the teams that I'm getting a lot of exposure to. But for FanDuel, I do slightly prefer the Cleveland Guardians there. And then you see, as far as our individual hitter exposures, it is very much geared towards the Atlanta Braves and the Cleveland Guardians. Pitchers, I'm seeing Waldron show up in lineups, Luis Castillo, there's Zach Wheeler, Freddie Peralta. So we're pretty spread out at pitcher on FanDuel, but best offenses to get to here. Cleveland Guardians #1 for me. Atlanta Braves, very chalky offensive lineup generators, also getting us to. Anything else that stands out to you on FanDuel, Matt? Single entry, I'd be playing the Guardians. It seems like you'd be in the same boat, but as a secondary stack, anything else stand out to you on FanDuel?
Not really. Other than the Braves getting much more ownership, it looks pretty similar. I think that I would want some Colorado exposure and maybe just game stack that game.
And oh, you know what? I don't know if I actually answered this. Somebody in chat, it was Free Scotty, said, sorry if you guys answered this already, but who's your preferred single entry team for today? Matt had said that he was in between a couple of spots. I don't think I'd actually given my answer, partially because I didn't know what it was yet. It's going to be one of the teams that I'd mentioned before. I don't want to go to Miami. I mean, looking at the data that I'm getting back to me in the Sims, it is kind of indicating Miami should be the team that I play based on my process. But it's not a team I'm comfortable getting to today. I think the Atlanta Braves is where I'm going to be landing in single entry. Actually, I'm going to say this. I am going to be landing on the Atlanta Braves. That's the team I'm going to be getting to. I have to kind of make this decision right now. And also, I find that when I really commit myself to the team, like, remember the other day we're doing the show, Matt, and I was kind of waffling between teams like, no, fuck it. I'm playing the Reds.
Yes.
And then I did really well that day. I finished like 5th in the 121, and the Reds had a really big day. So once again, I'm going to commit myself to Atlanta Braves in single entry for me today.
Love it. I'm still in between. So when I decide, I will let you know.
Yeah. Atlanta Braves for myself. And once again, if you guys have any questions for us in Discord, hit me up. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing. So the Blue Jays White Sox game is delayed. Does that do anything for you? Or like change anything for Gausman?
Not really, because unless we find out that the game, I'll pull up the weather report right now. Okay. Let's look at the weather. No, it looks like it's going to rain for the next hour and a half, 2 hours or so potentially, but then it's all good the rest of the day. If anything, it means that there's not that much risk of there being an in-game delay where he gets pulled.
Fair. What about bats? No, obviously no worries at all there.
Yeah, no changes with bats. I think we should be good there. But yeah, we did get word that game is going to be delayed. I can't tell you guys that there's a 0% chance that the game is going to get postponed, but it's very low risk. So I'm good with playing that spot. Another low risk spot for you guys today. Sign up it better. We've got a link for it below. You want to sign up with the promo code Stochastic1. And when you do get to double your first deposit up to $500 over there on Better. So a good way to help build your bankroll. Take advantage of that deposit bonus offer. And then another thing also, we do have a free best ball package over at Stochastic. So if you guys want to check it out, just make a free Stochastic account and go check out our best ball projections. We got projections, rankings for drafters, for underdog, for DraftKings. You could also upload our CSV right directly to those sites so that you get the pre-draft rankings already set. But once again, totally free best ball package. So if you guys are doing best ball drafts during the summer or maybe during the break of NBA season, you're looking for something to do at night, do some best ball drafts. Use our free projections because what better price is there than free? Any contrarian stacks you're liking for today that we did not hit on yet, Matt? We could talk about contrarian stacks, and then we'll do our home run picks and wrap it up for the day. But any kind of real crazy low-owned stacks that stand out to you?
No. I talked about the Royals. They're not going to be chalk, but they're not crazy low-owned. The only one I'd say, and this is like the Greg Ehrenberg school of thought, is the White Sox. Like, I think the Marlins look better because Waldron certainly isn't as good as Gausman, but Gausman has been very hit or miss, and he's going to be very high owned. So do with that what you will. I'm not playing them, but seen crazier things happen.
Yeah, for me, I mentioned before, Marlins are one of my 5 core stacks of the day. So Marlins for me have really low ownership. I don't have anything like lower owns than them that I'm getting to. Let me check our most recent ownership projections, but I think that qualifies as being, fairly crazy for today as a sub 5% owned team. Yeah, people are asking about the Angels are actually picking up ownership today, which is a little surprising to me. 4.4% ownership going to the Angels against Nestor Cortez. But yeah, of these really other low owned teams, nothing that really stands out to me today. The only team we have that's sub 2% owned is the Houston Astros, who I don't want to be rostering against Luis Castillo today. Maybe should they be more than, 0.9% owned, I guess, but not a team I'm going to be prioritizing in any kind of way. So let's finish this up here, Matt, by doing our dong picks. Matt, who's going to hit a homer tonight?
So I like Hunter Brown a lot at 6,500 from a DFS perspective, but Julio Rodriguez is taking him yard. This is a guy that has been notoriously hot and cold, and he's hot right now. Give me J-Rod to go deep.
So I had mentioned that I'm playing the Atlanta Braves in single entry. My most rostered hitter, not just from the Atlanta Braves, but on the entire slate right now, is Sean Murphy. So we have not seen very much of Sean Murphy this year. Very first game of the season, he suffers an oblique strain and then had to sit out the next, whatever it is, 50 games they're at this point in the season. He's back now. He was awesome last year, 129 WRC plus. He was also great the year before, the 122 WRC plus for Oakland. This is one of the best hitting catchers in baseball, kind of out of sight, out of mind. I think people forget about Sean Murphy because he hasn't played it all this year. He's only had 7 plate appearances the entire season, 2 games played. And I like going to Sean Murphy today. That is going to be my home run pick of the day. Let's see what YouTube chat has for us. We've got Eason Hines is going with Juan Soto for a double dong. Then we've got, who else? Arcathel's agrees with you. He's also saying Julio Rodriguez. Michael Roundtree's got Jake Bowers, CJ the Great, Matt Olson, Andre B, Yordan Alvarez, Junior Whopper has got JT Realmuto, Casey Leatherwood. Casey going with a couple of bats from the Miami Marlins. Jesus himself, Jesus Sanchez, and Jazz Chisholm. And then we've got Andy Melman's going with Danny Jensen. Aaron Hines has got Joe Adele. Kid Kobe's got Kevin Pillar. Ryan Rennebaum is going with, he says Schwartz, and I assume that's Kyle Schwarber when he says Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger for the double dong. Free Scotty's got Jake Berger. Max Video 35, Austin Riley. Yeah, another one, Austin Riley, who's missed a bunch of time. I know that the Braves are missing Acuna now, which is clearly a massive hit to their offense. But at the same time, too, they just got Sean Murphy back. They just got Austin Riley back. So there's some positives for that offense. Clintwood 83 has got Adolis Garcia. Deuce is going with Jose Ramirez. Of course, we have cheating when we play this game. Likely to homer, though. Skittles has got Soto. Austin Kabilski has got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And then we've got Red Kell going with Bo Bichette. And then Okizi has got Aaron Judge. So, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. In a little bit, in an hour from now, there's going to be NBA Live Before Lock. That's going to be from 8 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time with Eric Lindquist and Josh Engelman. Then right after that, Josh and myself are going to be sweating the game, watching it over on playback. So go join us there at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Good luck with all your lineups. I'll see you later tonight.